Don't you know that New York is killing me? I was standing there dying, and New York was killing me. The great Gil Scott Heron. Welcome to another episode of Ontological Shock. I am Eliott Edge.
And I am Nathaniel Voss.
How are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing pretty good.
I see you have failed to change clothing since the last time we appeared on this program.
As have you, as we recorded the last episode not more than 10 minutes ago.
I suppose we're on a roll.
Yes.
So, we were just talking about Billy Graham and televangelism, and
Yes, we were.
I was, I had a long-term girlfriend. I guess 3 years is long-term, I suppose. It's not 13 years, but, you know, it was long for me. And one day, we had this thing where we would like to go on to what we called lobby tours. So we go into lobbies of famous buildings.
Okay.
Because they really don't let you go anywhere else. But one time, we stumbled into the lobby of the Christian Broadcasting Network. And,
That's an impressive lobby.
It is. You've been there. You've seen it.
I have looked in the front doors.
You haven't gone in?
I was averse to the possibility.
It's a terrifying. So the thing was this, is that we went in because we were like, holy shit. Because she was a culture and religion scholar.
Okay.
And I saw that building and I was like, holy shit, my mom gives these people money. So I want to see where this money is going. And you go in, and there's a bright red carpet on the floor. Looks like the Oscar ceremony or something. And everything inside is gold-plated. They have gold-plated cherubs on the newel posts of the fucking staircases and everything like that. And I called it a Las Vegas whorehouse. When I went in there, and the wild thing was that, I mean, it looked like Donald Trump's penthouse apartment. I mean, everything gold, right? And one day I would happen to be with my mother, who is a tithing Christian, tithing being you give money, you get favor from the Lord. And I was like, I want to show you where your money is going. Your money is going to this fucking lobby. And she went in, and I expected her to be like, these people are the minions of Mammon. Like, these people are evil. Like, how could they spend all this money on just such ornate garbage? And instead, she had the total opposite reaction. She was like, this is what heaven looks like. I was like, oh, man, that fucking backfired. You should go in sometime. You really should.
Yeah, you know, it reminds me of an experience I had while on the psilocybin mushroom.
One of my favorite mushrooms.
Yes. And my wife, Nicole, and I were in the midst of one of these experiences. And I said, you know what I want to do? I want to become saturated in darkness. And I said,
what did you mean by darkness when you said that?
I'm going to elaborate.
Okay.
I said, let's go to Midtown.
Yeah, sounds like darkness to me.
And we began by walking through Macy's, which is the largest freestanding store in the world, to my knowledge. And
Retail store, you mean?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know. I may stand corrected.
Okay.
But I remember saying, this here is what would be shown in a montage of the extinction of the human race.
Sure.
You know how you see these montages of the undoing of the dinosaurs where you have this cometary or asteroidal impact? I'm saying at some point, and I was saying this quite loudly, and I was...
So you're high on psilocybin at the time?
Yes, and I'm gesturing like a prophet. And I'm saying this is what future civilizations will visualize when attempting to describe or display the destructive hubris and the suicidal pathology of the human species during the late capitalist period. And then I was like, let's go to Times Square.
So make it even worse.
Yeah, it was about as bad as you'd expect. And from there, I was like, let's go into the Scientology headquarters and let's watch the Scientology propaganda. And she said to me, no, no, just stop. We've done enough.
She cut you off.
Yeah, and you know, there's a certain.
It's important to listen to your girl.
It is important to listen to the voice of reason.
Too bad. I would have loved to see what that was like on psilocybin. And actually, it sounds like a perfect environment for you.
I've done a lot of ill-advised things in my time.
I guess it makes two of us.
Yeah, and that would have been another one.
Well, I would have loved that, actually. Oh, too bad. So, because the thing is, it makes me think of like fast fashion. Actually, are you familiar with fast fashion?
No.
So the whole problem with the fashion industry is it's actually supposedly the number 2 most destructive industry on the planet, next to fossil fuel.
Really?
Yeah, it's number 2, and the reason why is the unbelievable level of resources involved. Because what fast fashion means is that you have to come up with a new fashion line every season. So things that don't get bought get thrown away. It's not really sustainable in any kind of way, shape, or form. It's just about the next fashion, the next look. And there was a brief period where I actually ended up doing social media for what's called a slow fashion company, where they try to do ecologically friendly fashion type of thing. And the problem with it is this, is that like, A, no one wants to buy it, and B, it's extremely expensive. I mean, it's way more expensive than buying, like, say, a $30 suit jacket from H&M or something like that. So, I mean, I think actually that assessment right there is right, where you're talking about future civilizations, looking at like what didn't work. It's fast fashion especially. I mean, no kidding. Number 2 most destructive industry on the planet, supposedly. Last I checked.
That's amazing. I had no idea. But, you know, what it brings to mind for me is the insanity of our entire culture.
Oh, yeah.
Because the fact that fashion has to oscillate as quickly as it does is related to the phenomena of planned obsolescence.
So here we go. Yeah, let's
And
talk about
perceived
fashion, planned
obsolescence.
obsolescence, and planned obsolescence in technology. Let's do that.
Okay.
There we go. Because I think that's one of the most profound evils out there. So let's go.
Yeah, and I think that that is an expression of consumerism as a religious attitude. Consumerism.
That's interesting. I never thought about that.
Yeah. You know what Yuval Noah Harari says? I don't remember whether he says this in his first book, Sapiens, or his second book,
Homo Deus.
Yeah. But he says that consumerism is the first religion in the history of the planet that all of its adherents obey.
You don't know which book he says that in?
One of the two.
One of the two. I mean, that's consumerism is probably one of the most successful ideologies in terms of people glomming onto it. It's very difficult to resist. It's very difficult not to buy into. The only way I've tried to get out of it is shopping at thrift stores. Everything I'm wearing was from a thrift store or something someone gave to me. The only thing I buy that are new are sneakers and underwear and socks. I feel like you kind of can't get those secondhand. But my shirt, actually this shirt was a gift, but my suit jacket, my jeans and everything, all from thrift stores. That's one way to kind of subvert it.
I think consumerism is particularly insidious because I was talking about this with Shinobi Adept the other day when we were discussing nihilism. And I was saying that the global consumer economy effectively constitutes a form of weaponized samsara.
Whoa. So for the people who don't know, what is samsara?
Samsara is the cycle of cyclic existence. It is the wheel of rebirth through which sentient beings are said to transmigrate. But more especially, it is the condition of being trapped in a cycle of suffering that is fundamentally driven by ignorance.
It's a Buddhist concept, right?
Yeah, it's a Buddhist concept, and the center of the wheel of samsara are what is known as the three poisons. And those are ignorance, greed, and hatred.
And those are the three poisons of samsara. That's why everyone's life suffers.
Yes, those are the mental emotional conditions that cause us to create a reality of suffering. Yeah, and
And commercialism takes advantage of this,
yes,
weaponizes
because
it.
commercialism is about instilling, deepening, and expanding upon a sense of insufficiency, inadequacy, and lack. And those
Lack,
are, yeah,
lack.
yeah, and those are all variable translations that you can give for dukkha,
Dukkha?
suffering.
Dukkha is suffering.
Yeah, yeah. And the Buddhist scholar David Loy has an extremely insightful analysis about this, where he says that you can understand the predicament of contemporary society by thinking about it as the three poisons institutionalized.
Oh my gosh.
So, ignorance is the mass media and education.
Yeah.
Hatred is the military industrial complex.
And racism.
Yeah, 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 all that. And greed is the
Lifeblood of the economy.
yeah, greed is transnational corporate capitalism and everything.
It's like
that it
we're
creates.
whispering like these are terrible secrets, but everyone secretly knows them.
Yeah, well, you know,
That's true. I mean, I couldn't agree more. It's completely institutionalized. The dukkha, the suffering, has been institutionalized. I wrote something in anti-teachings for young people, one of my books, one of my blogs.
Right.
I wrote, insecurity is the lifeblood of capitalism and
Yeah.
consumerism. It is the lifeblood. If you are secure, you need very little. But if you're insecure, you need the biggest yacht. You need the most expensive suit. You need the best manicure. You need the best facial. All that kind of shit.
yeah. You know, it's like they say in the story of stuff that have you ever seen that? It's a really insightful, like 10, 15-minute long video that pretty much trashes a lot of things about society.
No, never
and its
heard of
ways.
it.
It's incredible. It'll be one of your new favorite.
Is it on
videos.
YouTube? Can I find it on YouTube?
Yes, you can find it on
Story of stuff.
Yes, you will watch it and you will appreciate it. But they talk about the reason why that iPhones need to be a different shape, heels need to go from skinny heels to fat heels, is because you need to demonstrate that you have contributed to the cycle of consumption recently.
You need to demonstrate
Yes, if you do not.
that you are a current subscription customer.
Correct. Because if you don't, then you're not signaling to your peers that you are participating in this fundamental cultural ethic.
And this ethic is part of not just bonding with a potential mate, but bonding with the greater economy and the greater, I would call it, like artificial ecosystem that we've
Right.
created.
Yeah.
If you're not wearing the latest shit or driving the latest car, then you're not far from being considered a has-been or a hack or a loser. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. And, you know, it's interesting because there is a deep human need to be part of a community.
That's true, yeah.
We want to show the other members of our tribe that we are participating in the same zeitgeist.
That's right.
And there are all kinds of nonverbal behavioral
Cues.
cues. There are also symbolic cues in terms of what one wears.
Right.
And people want a sense of belonging, and people want to signal to others that they're part of the same tribe, that they are safe, that they share an underlying narrative about the nature of the human condition and about life. And if you're not with it,
With it.
yes, then it signals some kind of personal deficiency,
Deficiency.
or perhaps not a
Lack.
commitment to being part of the current.
This is exceptional. This is exceptional. And I love it because we're both wearing generally anti-establishment shirts. I'm wearing something that says R.I.P. patriarchy, your time has come, which is something I generally believe in. And you're wearing Star Trek, which at the schematic for the technology, which is like one of the most wonderful things. It's socialist. They have no money. They're just about forwarding the human agenda, forwarding love, compassion, understanding, knowledge, science, exploration, all these values
Yes.
that actually would work. I mean, because there's nothing capitalist really in Star Trek, right?
Yeah.
It's anti-capitalist.
Did you ever see the meme where they contrast Star Trek with Mad Max? And on
No,
Star Trek
but I
part,
would love to hear more about that.
so they got the Picard Enterprise, right? And at the top, and they say socialism in like meme letters. And then they've got something from the last Mad Max movie.
Fury Road.
Yeah, where they're
Fucking love that
furiously
shit.
gunning each other down
That
in
shit
the
was
wasteland.
so good.
And it says libertarianism.
Yeah, I mean, kind of. Yeah, kind of.
I sent that to Pig Venus, and he said, "I'll take libertarianism any day."
We can't have an episode without mentioning Pig Bemis. It would not be fair.
We might need to institutionalize that as part of the structure of our
Yeah,
segments.
yeah. I think we got to meme him into existence, just for being such a wackadoo. I mean, I don't know. I'm just learning more about him all the time.
That reminds me of something funny that Peter de Lavenda and Tom DeLonge said in that book I was just...
Peter Lavenda. Oh yeah, right. We mentioned that on the last episode. We didn't
Yeah,
really
yeah.
get into that too much. We
Gods,
fucking should.
man,
Secret
and
machines,
war.
right?
Yeah.
Secret machines.
And they say that the Egyptian conception of the soul is the Ka.
Right.
And the Ka is the image of light, which persists in the absence of the body. And they said something really funny. They're like, well, you know, Tom's image has been recorded on innumerable devices and broadcast through space.
Tom DeLonge, you're saying.
And so they say that from the point of view of an ancient Egyptian, Tom DeLonge has achieved immortality because his Ka has been perpetuated throughout the informational infrastructure of the noosphere.
So here you go. Here's another comment that we're going on this capitalism consumerism angle.
Yes.
Is that one of the things fame offers you is a form of pseudo immortality.
Yes.
As does the internet. Well, media in general. I mean, we're still talking about, Akhenaten, for God's sakes.
Yes.
The heretic pharaoh who created monotheism in a polytheistic culture. And I think he died in a rebellion. I'm not sure if that's correct, but I wish actually our station manager here could pull up like internet posts to double check, like on Joe Rogan. But I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure it was Akhenaten.
We need...
And he's been immortalized in media.
Yeah.
The Egyptian pharaohs are immortalized in media. Media is a way to create a kind of pseudo immortality, and we worship those who get fossilized in media.
Well, I think that's part of the deep narrative of Gilgamesh, because Gilgamesh goes on this quest to achieve immortality,
Right.
and he's not able to do it in the body. And later on in the story, he inscribes his story on the walls of the city.
Oh, wow.
And so that is a very early history recognition that the advent of the written word and of symbolic communication is a way for people to transcend death.
Yeah, there we go. And I guess that's our number one goal. There was a book that came out recently that I meant to read because it was super conspiratorial. It sounded absolutely nuts and it sounded fantastic. I think it was by Joseph P. Farrell, if I get his name right.
Oh, he's great.
He's fucking great, right? He's fun.
I have like several of his books
No, he's
on
fun.
the shelf
Yeah.
in my room.
Do you know this one he wrote about the connection between alchemy, immortality, technology, and
The
transhumans?
Philosopher's Stone.
The Philosopher's Stone.
Yeah,
I
last
picked
time-
up that book every time I was in the bookstore, and I'm shocked that I never bought it.
Yeah,
Because the transhumanists are basically talking about the same thing we've always talked about, which is like, how do we achieve immortality? And I'm always, I've been involved with several transhumanist communities. H plus has like reblogged my material. I'm and on the advisory board of the Lifeboat Foundation, which is arguably quasi transhumanist. And I've written for the IEET. But my brother sometimes is like a really hardcore transhumanist, where he'll talk about not dying.
Yes.
And I just can't accept that notion. I can accept longevity and certain therapies to make the human being survive the slings and arrows of the world. But the idea of not dying, I think, is like, one, angsty, and two, unrealistic.
Well, I don't think it's physically impossible.
Okay.
Well, given certain very special conditions, and also given that certain as yet unsubstantiated scientific possibilities are the case. But what I think this kind of highlights, when you talk about not dying,
Right.
you start to get into issues about the nature of consciousness, the nature of reality,
Precisely.
and personal identity.
Precisely.
Something I like to think about in connection with the Buddhist teaching of no self is this demonstration from Western philosophy. I think it's called the Ship of Theseus.
Okay.
And the idea is, you imagine...
Is this the same Theseus from the Minotaur myth? Or
If
is
I'm
that-
even right that that's what
Okay,
it's called.
okay.
It's the
No big deal.
ship
No.
of something.
Okay.
But picture this ship,
Okay.
which has a plank changed every year.
Right.
Okay. So then most people would agree that at the end of that process, after every plank has been changed,
It's
it
a
is the
different
shame
ship.
ship. It's a shame.
Oh, it's the same?
Because your body does that, and we feel ourselves to be the same entity.
It's true. I don't know if I have a single cell in me that's the same as when I was 10 years old. Isn't that like
No,
a scientific
yeah,
fact?
I don't think you do. I don't remember the rate, but your cells change at different rates, like your
Right.
neural cells, like your
Like your
skin
bones
cells.
change
Yeah,
at a different rate.
and the molecules in your body, like, different than that. So there are all these rates.
Good gosh.
Yeah, we're a complex braid of world lines.
Wow.
So now the thought experiment gets a little weirder with
Okay.
this ship thing.
Okay.
Because, okay, let's say you agree that the ship at the end of this process is in fact the same ship, right?
Okay.
What about if you were to take all the planks that were removed and assemble them into another one? Which one is the ship?
So now we're talking about a clone kind of thing?
Yeah, well, the thing is that I believe this thought experiment hits upon something essential about the nature of personal identity
Okay.
and about the nature of selflessness and what selflessness actually means.
Yeah, because that's actually what I wanted you to get around to.
Yeah, because the doctrine of no self basically comes down to the fact that there is no enduring, permanent essence which constitutes what you really are. And whatever you try to stipulate as being the enduring, permanent, separate essence always dissolves under analysis.
I have a question.
Yes.
So, I think no self probably doesn't connect well to the Western mind like it does to the Eastern mind.
It's challenging for anybody.
Anybody?
It's a counterintuitive thing. It always has been counterintuitive. And I think that part of why people receive it negatively is because it seems to be implying something other than what it is implying, which is nothingness or non-existence. Whereas what it is it is a clarification about how things do exist.
Because going with that thinking, that's what I was going to address, because I think it would be almost more... Because translating Eastern texts into Western vernacular is always slippery, tricky. I was thinking more along the lines of an ever-changing self rather than a no self.
Right.
Because I feel like the only thing we really possess is not just a body. But yeah, no, we have a mind, and the mind is constantly evolving and taking in new information and being different and stuff. So rather than a no self or a I think it would be more for the Western mind, comfortable, not just comfortable, but understandable if it was ever-changing self. If it was ever-changing self. But what do you think about that? Is that accurate, or am I missing a nuance?
I don't think that you can just reduce selflessness to impermanence, because in Buddhism, there are said to be 3 characteristics that can be apprehended in every momentary experience.
Okay.
So everything that you can phenomenologically witness has 3 qualities: suffering, impermanence,
Yeah.
and no self. And
Whoa.
in Vipassana,
Happy.
in the system of Vipassana that I'm most
And,
familiar with.
and you mentioned Vipassana not a lot, and I really don't know it that well.
Okay. Well, the system, the way of engaging Vipassana, because it's understood differently in different traditions. The Tibetans have a more analytical version of this, which is much more rational and conceptual, which they call analytical meditation, but it's a form of Vipassana. Vipassana, as I have practiced it mainly, has to do with paying precise moment-to-moment attention with as much speed, inclusiveness, precision, and consistency as possible.
So you're talking about reading the given moment with as much awareness.
Yeah, you're trying to pay
As you can
attention
do.
to experience on a moment-by-moment basis, sensation by sensation.
So you're trying to be an athlete of the mind, in a sense.
Yeah, it is a lot like it. One of the most, what I regard, and I will plug as often as possible, as the supreme contemporary text on meditation available in the English language, is a book called Mastering the Core Teachings of the Buddha by Dr. Daniel Ingram. He's like an emergency medical physician in Alabama.
Wow.
He has spent a lot of time on retreat in Burma and other places in Southeast Asia, and he wrote a book in which he unambiguously and systematically talks about how to master the states and stages of meditation and exactly what to expect.
And do other Buddhists, even though because he's a white dude in Alabama, do other Buddhists endorse his work?
Yeah. I mean, there are people who find him to be problematic because, for example, he challenges certain conventional definitions.
Okay.
For example, a traditional Theravada Buddhist would regard an arhat as being emotionally perfect in every way and incapable of wrongdoing. And Ingram...
That's quite a claim.
Yeah. Ingram naturalizes that. And he has a kind of deflationary account of it, because he says what actually happens is you have much more objectivity, or there is much more objectivity about mental emotional constructs as they arise as part of a causal flux.
I'm really surprised to hear a Buddhist talk about objectivity like that. Or in those terms, because I figure that most Buddhists are 100% subjective. But I guess you're right. Like anger feels like this, sadness feels like this. These are almost objective type of truths.
Well, the thing is that we believe that we are a point somewhere in our head or somewhere in experience, that there is a center point of experience which is in control of the rest of the field. But when you impartially observe the whole field of experience, what happens is that you start to notice things having to do with the 3 characteristics, that thoughts just arise on their own. Nobody asks for them.
Yeah,
Where do they come from? They go from nowhere. They go on their own. There's no one driving this car. So that's insight into selflessness.
No, that's true. Actually, I have can we go on a tangent right here?
Yeah.
So one of the things I do a lot about is I do a lot of speculation about AI, even though I'm not a scientist, I'm not an engineer. But I love reading about it, and I love everyone who kind of knows my material knows that I write a lot about Tom Campbell, an astrophysicist and consciousness researcher who wrote my favorite book. Like you're talking about your favorite book right here. My favorite was My Big Toe by Tom Campbell. It's a great book. It's really inspired me in my career. But one of the things that you end up thinking about is as he starts talking about consciousness, he starts talking about how to make a computer conscious, how to make an AI conscious. And now that you're saying this, one of the, thoughts are random. I barely have the ability to exude any control over these thoughts.
Right.
Maybe one of the ways of making an AI would be to slam it with random thoughts and see which ones it picked and followed through with them. Because that's basically us. We're slammed with random thoughts, we're slammed with random information. Basically, all we're doing is modeling all day long. And then we just choose which models we want to follow through with, or we want to see where they go.
I think that's an interesting thought. In a similar vein, there's one really standout sentence about the emergence of consciousness in machines that has really influenced my thinking. And it comes from another one of my favorite books, which is The Key by Whitley Strieber.
Gotta read it. I gotta read it.
Yeah, it's a super weird book. And
It sounds like it would make a great movie.
yeah, it would be great if they did that. I hope they do.
I kind of want to make. I haven't even read The Key, and when I get the premise of it, so real quick, what's the premise of The Key? How does it? How does that go?
First, let me say this real quick.
Okay, sure.
In The Key, it says that an intelligent machine will become conscious the moment it realizes that it is not conscious.
I love that.
Yeah, it's because of things like that that originally Pig Venus and I, that is Joan Newberry,
Right.
wanted to write a book about the underlying philosophy of The Key, because The Key is subtextually rich to an extremely unusual degree. And in the deep structure of it, one can discern shadows of Hegel, Nietzsche, Dzogchen, Mahamudra. But in the surface text, what it is, it's a kind of theory of everything, of the whole conspiratorial universe that you encounter in Coast to Coast with Art Bell.
Oh my God, yes.
So,
Yes. I can't believe I haven't read this book yet.
yeah, no, I recommend it. Pig Venus's last work was a 300-page paper in which he attempted to demonstrate that a lot of the claims in The Key really have more to do with Strieber than his purported interlocutor. And
Who was the guy who just randomly showed up in his hotel room in the middle of the night to give him this like Gnostic download, right?
right. You know, I find it to be a really interesting and rich text, whatever the case may be with. And you know, I don't think, and I talked to him a lot about this, that he was claiming that this encounter did not take place. He was saying that, well, I'm not going to try to put words in his mouth.
Okay.
But because his analysis of it is actually very sophisticated and subtle. But he doesn't disagree that the encounter took place. My own feeling about it is that, you know, if you were to try to write down a conversation after the fact, it will naturally,
You'll hear what you want to hear in any conversation.
your paraphrase of it will
Right.
reflect a lot of your...
Prejudices, biases, beliefs.
So you're asking me a minute ago about the book.
Right.
Right. So The Key is it's by Whitley Strieber.
And this is the guy who wrote the famous book Communion
Yeah. So this happened
about alien abduction.
yeah, like 11 years, like years and years after the original experience that is recorded in Communion, where in December of 1986, he says that he was taken aboard a craft and he was subjected to a series of invasive and traumatizing experiences at the hands of an apparently non-human intelligence.
Yeah, and I believe there were two species. There were the blue dwarfs and there were the gray aliens.
Yeah, he calls the blue dwarves, and this is a fun term, he calls them two things: cobalts, like cobalt blue. Yeah, and Soltex.
Soul tax. Why does he call them soul tax?
Because his secretary, Lori Barnes, or at least I think she was his secretary, she had an encounter with them where she woke up in the middle of the night and they were surrounding her and they were looking down at her and she was freaked out.
Yeah.
And they tried to assuage this fear by saying, "We're not interested in you. We're interested in the child that you're carrying."
Holy shit.
And at the time, they couldn't tell the gender of unborn babies, and it did turn out to be a girl. But,
oh my gosh.
Yeah, yeah. So I think it's part of the same
I
story.
mean, she was pregnant.
Yeah, yeah. So I think it's part of the same story, but they say we recycle souls, and so
All
they're
right, let's go
saying
there.
that they are somehow
Let's go there.
involved in manipulating the process of reincarnation.
So this is one of my favorite things in the alien abduction literature is the connection with the there are these rumors. There's these rumors in the alien abduction literature. Great case in point is Bob Lazar, who I think is actually rather credible. They had that great documentary about him right now called Lazar. It's worth buying, not stealing, but buying. Where he says he was given a bunch of government documents where they refer to human beings as containers, like containers for the soul. And now I'm reading that book called The Dual Soul. He doesn't know
containers for what.
Right, containers
it could be for the soul. It could be for DNA.
Sure. I mean, no, actually that's valid because they're supposedly obsessed with DNA and cum and ovum and jism and all that shit. Like, they just suck it out of us every time they can.
Yeah.
But the soul thing, like, there's a lot of literature about UFOs and the soul and alien encounters with the soul where I think Strieber even says maybe it's in The Key, where he talks about how they're part of the afterlife scenario in some kind of weird way.
Yeah, that got started with his wife, Anne Strieber, who took it upon herself to analyze the enormous amount of correspondence they were receiving from people who said that they were having similar experiences. They came to some interesting conclusions, one of which was they were trying to get a criteria of which ones were more reliable as being probably true. And they came to the conclusion it's probably not true if it isn't weird enough. But more especially, she came to a conclusion because she had like a pad or like a note thing where she was trying to chart out the themes. And according to Strieber, she is the first person to make the following observation, which she recorded in this way. This has something to do with what we call death.
Yeah, that's what I remember.
Yeah, in Communion, he says something really interesting. He says maybe the close encounter phenomena is what evolution looks like when applied to an intelligent, conscious mind. Think about that in connection with what Jacques Vallée says about the whole phenomena being a control system or a feedback mechanism.
Oh, wow.
So what if what the phenomena actually does is
give us
the most liminal sort of manifestation that our evolved constructs can handle in order to challenge our culture and our collective consciousness to reach another level. So that Strieber's reading of this whole thing is that it is...
They kind of drag you up, right?
It's
drag
kind
you
of
up the ladder.
Initiatory theatrical koan.
That's the language Strieber uses?
Well, that's a paraphrase.
Okay, I was going to say, anyone who shuts down his language, you paraphrase people beautifully, I got to tell you, because if that's not his language, that's good. An initiatory koan?
Well, I think, to be fair, Pasulka uses the word koan. I've thought about it before reading that text, and I think I might have heard Strieber say that because, there are people who kind of... there are a lot of people who have similar or overlapping readings of this. The way Terence McKenna talks about the alien, although for him, the alien isn't as simple as something from another. And it isn't for Strieber either.
I'm pretty sure he's ultimately... His ultimate thesis is the alien is the imagination.
Well, it's hard to pin him down, and I think there's a lot more overlap between Strieber and McKenna than one might think, because as Strieber's work developed, he really clarified, he made the claim that he wasn't an advocate for alien contact.
Strieber said
yeah,
this.
because
he's
saying
like Mr.
he
Alien
does
Contact.
not want to say that is what this definitely is. Beings from somewhere else in space who traveled from a planet to here.
Oh,
they
so
could
he
be
means
from
ETH?
the future.
Does he mean ETH?
Yeah, the extraterrestrial. He's saying that he's not necessarily committed to the extraterrestrial hypothesis.
Okay.
He is not in any way saying his work is about the phenomenon.
Okay.
Personally, I respect that. Although I always want to emphasize myself that there is something very material about this, or it has a capacity to be material.
Oh, totally.
I mean, this is something...
No, it leaves... You cannot... Here's the thing. So there's a lot of people who want to talk about the UFO as not being material, or not being nuts and bolts. But the thing is that, like, when you leave a radiation signature, And when you give people radiation sickness, that's about as material as it fucking gets, honestly.
Well, it's something that challenges our metaphysical distinction between material and immaterial.
Certainly. Their technology, as it appears, seems to completely bypass normal concepts of space, time, and matter. I'll totally give it that. I'll totally give it that. But to knock off, like, I mean, people get radiation poisoning and die from cancer. I mean, here's one of my favorite things about the UFO. And I talked to David Metcalf about this on the Stixoplix show. It was the three of us talking. And this was a point I really wanted them to give me feedback on, because at the time I was just thinking about it really intensely. But it was this. The UFOs pollute. They pollute. They create radiation. There's like soil that they land in where nothing ever grows. It's like they salted the earth like the Roman soldiers did or something like that. I think that's like when we start, or when we try to conjure with like the characteristics of these people, and I will call them these people, they have they have vehicles that pollute, and like our cars, like our jumbo jets.
Yeah. Well, one way you could approach this contradiction, although I wouldn't want to just reduce it to this reading, is
No. It's just an aspect that I think is
I'm gonna try
that needs attention. Yeah.
I don't want to reduce it to what I'm about to say.
Okay.
If reality is a simulation,
Oh yeah, here we go.
then
Here we go, folks.
one way of understanding them.
We've made it. Hold on. We're where we're supposed to be now. If reality is a simulation. All right, let's
One way
go.
of understanding them is as high-level endgame users.
That's right. That's exactly how you have to read them. If reality is a simulation.
They can walk. They can
They
suspend.
can walk through walls. They can instantly make you unconscious.
Yes. So if someone is a high-level user,
That shit's hot.
think about the Matrix.
Oh man, I'm already there.
Okay, so the Morpheus.
You can hear it in my voice how fucking hot this makes me. I'm such a nerd. Sorry.
Yeah. Morpheus says to Neo, the Matrix is a system. That system has rules. Some of them can be bent. Others can be broken. Yeah. So...
And the Greys are the great rule breakers in terms of like Newtonian, quantum, and relativistic physics. Yes, 100%.
they're hackers.
They're hackers.
Or the intelligence behind them is hackers. Because it could be that the Greys were, for all we know, the Greys were biomechanically created by a von Neumann machine.
I mean,
or
that's
some other
what some people
intelligence.
say. Some people say they're fucking robots.
Yeah, at the same time, people.
How
talk
are you
about-
liking this show, bro? Are you bored? Yeah, are you liking it? This is some far out shit. I'm just checking. Okay.
I like the convention of checking in with Matt.
Oh yeah, no, we have to always check in with Matt, because Matt's watching us like make asses of ourselves. So we gotta
Yes.
check in and make sure that we at least we're amusing while we do it. Okay, so yes, they might be robots. They might be robot drones that work for. I heard they were the bejeweled mantis people. That,
I've heard- look,
that
this
they
is-
run the show. That secretly giant mantises run the show.
Yeah.
The UFO agenda. That's what I heard.
David Jacobs writes about that. I've heard accounts where they say that in reality, there is one original species in this galaxy that we know of, and that is the insectolins. And the Greys.
They're called the insectolins.
Well, that is what David Jacobs calls them.
They were the insectoids.
Well, he
Good
says that
1950s villain.
he said he prefers the term insectolin because insectoid is part of biological terminology already.
Okay. Well, I got to tell you, insectolin will, as a PR and marketing expert, insectolin will never make it. Insectoid, they will always be called insectoids.
It's better than Linda Moulton Howe's choice phrase where she says, the standing up alligator people. Have you ever heard her say that? She says that. And all this.
And I love what was that one, The Strange Harvest, that movie she made for HBO in the 80s. That shit's great.
The last time I watched that straight.
It's on YouTube for free. Check it the
Right.
fuck out. It's dope.
I love the soundtrack.
I think she did the soundtrack. Oh no, she did the audio mixing and the editing, but she hired someone to do the synthesizer. But then that
Shinobi
soundtrack is
would
fucking
like
dope.
would do a great many things to get an original sample of that soundtrack.
should
'Cause
just call her up.
He really wants to sample it.
No, yo, that's beautiful.
But anyway, last time I watched it with
That's
a
a
group of people,
project.
it was right after we came down from a collective salvia trip. And I'm like, hey, everybody, let's
Wait, hold on.
spend-
I missed the opening of that story. Sorry. You were on when were you on Salvia?
I don't know, I was in the living room.
Okay,
you
hanging
know.
loose.
Yeah, we were all hanging.
Legal, by the way, guys.
Well, at the time it was. The state laws regarding salvia have changed.
Oh my god. Too bad. Man, they're just ready to crush anything that's not booze.
You're not supposed to have it's like Graham Hancock says in that amazing TED Talk. You are not supposed to have sovereignty over your conscious
consciousness.
experience. It's fucked.
Wake up, guys. Everybody. Your consciousness. You have to have what? Sovereignty? I don't like that word. It makes me feel like a libertarian. Can we find another word besides sovereignty? Ownership. You own your mind. You own your thoughts. You own your consciousness. You should be able to dabble. Everybody dabbles with, like, sugar. Sugar is I think sugar is the gateway drug, actually, right?
Right.
Sugar, coffee, nicotine. Why not salvia? I mean, it's not bath salts. And it's not cocaine, where you just suddenly become an asshole for no reason.
Yeah.
Anyway, upward walking alligator people.
Standing
What a
up-
nomenclature.
Standing up alligator people.
Standing up alligator people. I mean, it paints an image.
Yeah, and
It does paint an image.
I hasten to add, as we're talking about all this weirdness,
No, please.
that a lot of this is folklore.
Oh, it's all... Well, I mean, largely we deal in folklore.
Yeah, that's what's interesting about the UFO phenomena.
Yeah.
Because it is a mixture of
Right.
genuine evidence,
Right.
counterintelligence,
That's right.
confabulation,
Confabulation.
deliberate exaggeration on the part of purported witnesses,
Straight up hoax.
and then the way that it complexifies in the telephone game of culture.
I love this shit.
And there are these epicycles and feedback loops of interpretation and narrative that mutate. And it represents a tremendous challenge to understand. In a way, it's very much like philosophy itself.
Yeah, no, you're right. I think actually, here's the thing. Modern scholars and modern academics, if you're not doing philosophy with the focus on being technology and ecology, psychedelics and altered states of consciousness, any kind of altered state of consciousness, from sleeping to waking, and the paranormal and UFO phenomenon, I feel like you're basically fucking with the 19th and 20th century. Like, I feel like you're a fucking loser if you're not dealing with these kind of, like, really deep assaults on the human consciousness, because these things assault human mind, human thinking, human tradition, human culture, human consciousness. And if you're not ready to face this, then your philosophy isn't worth a goddamn. Unless it's a moral philosophy, unless you're doing with ethics and moral philosophy, and you're trying to destroy, like, racism, sexism, and all that kind of evil shit, nationalism and so on. I mean, otherwise, you're not vanguard at all. You're probably dealing with a fucking pissing war about, conflicting vocabulary schemes. Anyway, I'll leave that at that.
You know what Pig Venus wanted to do at one point?
What
before
was
he
that?
became disillusioned with Strieber.
I wish he didn't, but yeah.
Well, he had principled reasons that he defended at length. I'll put a link to his paper.
Yeah, we should link Pig Bemis.
Yes. But anyhow, what am I thinking? He originally wanted to send the conversation from the key to every philosophy professor in the English-speaking world.
Fuck yeah.
He was going to do that as a guerrilla campaign, and he wasn't going to put the introduction or the afterwards, which contextualized the conversation. He was just going to put
Just
the
the
conversation.
So hold on. I don't think people know what the key is yet.
Okay.
We keep on
We
saying
started
it.
talking about it. I'll say it quickly.
Just quickly.
And then I'm going to transition to
yeah, sure,
wrapping
but-
up,
but
because
just-
we're coming up on our last 10 minutes.
Fucking love this.
Yeah, I know, right? Time flies when you're having fun.
You damn right.
Yes. So,
What is the Key by Whitley Strieber, the guy who did Communion,
Yeah.
Christopher Walken movie.
okay. Yeah, Strieber doesn't like Christopher Walken's portrayal.
I know, that's why I brought it up.
Yeah.
So evil.
Yes. But anyways, he's a very polite man, and he's a person who manages his emotional presentation very well.
He
But
does.
I had the fortune or the interesting moment of seeing him talk about Christopher Walken's portrayal in person.
Oh yeah, Nico
in
Crazy.
the desert at night. He just looked so deeply consternated. Like,
Well, it's terrible. It's
Yeah.
probably one of Christopher Walken's worst. Like, no one has any idea. I
Yes.
mean, even as a viewer, the reason why people watch the movie Communion is not because it's an alien abduction movie, because it's a movie because you see Christopher Walken make these acting choices that don't make sense on any fucking level, really.
yeah. So the key
kiss
is,
of the
is
key.
it purports to be the record of an encounter that took place in 1998 when Strieber was on a tour for his book Confirmation, which was the fourth book.
So
in
this
the
is his
Communion
fourth
series.
book about UFO
Yeah.
visitors.
Uh-huh.
He's on
And by this
tour.
point, he had developed his relationship with the phenomena in complex and subtle ways. And he's at the Delta Chelsea Hotel in Toronto, Canada.
Love it.
And at 3 o'clock in the morning, someone knocks on the door, and he thinks it's room service. He lets them in, and they proceed to walk in, and they start having this complex dialogue with him about the nature of reality.
And this is a dude in the middle of the night,
Yeah.
knocks on this, like, it's almost like a Men in Black type encounter.
Yes, it's very strange, and it's a rich text. Like I say about all of the stuff that we talk about here, I'm not advocating belief in it, but it is I think it is edifying to think about because complex, ambiguous, mysterious problems enrich us.
I agree.
You know what it says in the key? It says that the purpose of the UFO phenomena is to create questions which can neither be born nor answered because the tension. You know what I really like about that?
Wow.
Think about the beginning of the Critique of Pure Reason.
Oh my gosh.
Kant says that reason, by its very nature, creates questions which it cannot bear to leave unanswered, and yet which it can never resolve. That's how Critique of Pure Reason begins.
Oh my gosh.
Okay? And that's what I mean about the key and how it has all these incredibly rich resonances. Anyways, we're coming down to the end of this.
We have to leave again, but I guess we'll be back soon because we love you so much and we love each other so much. Actually,
Yes.
Nate's one of my favorite people in terms of being
Likewise.
able to, well, in terms of having just the balls to talk about strange stuff.
Right.
A lot of people like can't even begin to have the conversation. They just want to get like,
I've been on this kick for a long time.
Same.
You know, like we're
Same.
here recording on the boundary between Bayshore.
Where are we
and-
at? We're
we're
at
at,
Social Media House.
Social Media House. But this is, it's interesting.
Where is Social Media House?
It's in Bayshore by the Deer Park train station.
You guys
and
should
if you
come
want to
here.
come and record your stuff here,
You probably
you
should.
you can go to the website, which is also linked in the description, and you can use these excellent facilities to talk about your own madness.
And they are excellent, and
But-
they allow us to. I mean, look at what kind of madness we pull off
Yeah,
here.
But I want to say this. For
Yeah,
me,
sure.
doing it here is a little bit of a full circle thing because I went to school like a mile and a half that way. And in middle school, I did all of my science fair projects about the UFO and alien abduction. And a lot of it was predicated on, just becoming obsessed from a really early age with Hopkins, Jacobs, Strieber. Machiavelli came later, but I just found Timothy Good's book Above Top Secret and read the Strieber stuff, and I got really pulled into it for similar reasons to philosophy. And I think that the UFO, whatever its reality, even if
Whatever
it
it
is,
is.
if it is
Whatever
just
it
a
is.
cultural confabulation and it's the result of collective mythologizing, it's still an object of philosophical interest because it
is.
represents the transformation of religious belief and the permutations of ontology as the impulses that create religions come into contact with the technological world. I do not think it is just that. I think the evidence supports otherwise. But I'll say this. I've heard all these so-called science popularizers.
Fucking loving this, by the way.
Yeah. I've heard, I believe I've heard, if I were writing a book, I'd look this up and check, but I believe I've heard separately in different videos or text, Bill Nye and Neil deGrasse Tyson.
I know, they're
and
the
Stephen
worst.
Hawking.
And I love them.
Yeah, no, they're cool.
And I love them, but they don't
they
really
have all
care
said
about the UFO.
No, get this.
They don't really
They
care.
have all said this sentence.
Michio Kaku is more real.
Yeah, Michio Kaku is more real. Michio Kaku said on the news, like, yeah, this is a genuine
This is
anomaly.
a real ass shit right
And
here.
Michio Kaku isn't some nutbag.
No, he is not.
He is an important scientist,
He is
and
an
he is
important
a
fucking
skilled
science
science
teacher.
communicator. But
Oh man,
All
our dicks
of-
are hard right now.
Bill Nye and Neil deGrasse Tyson
Okay.
and Stephen Hawking, I believe, have all said the sentence, philosophy is dead.
Yeah.
But I believe this.
I love that.
I believe that the close encounter phenomena, the UFO, parapsychology, these all represent the opportunity for a renewed relevance. Not just a renewed relevance, but a renaissance in philosophy.
I completely agree.
Because the quintessence of philosophy is when we confront questions that we don't know how to think about. That's what philosophy really is about. Philosophy, originally physics, mathematics, psychology, these were all parts of philosophy. And as those have become amenable to empirical adjudication, they have ceased to be considered part of philosophy, and they've become their own autonomous discipline. So what we think of as philosophy is that residue of questions which we do not know how to even conceptualize. So what I think the UFO and other paranormal phenomena actually represent is a challenge to philosophize, to understand, to question at a deeper level than, at a very deep level.
You know what? And we're about to close on that, but I think the reason why it's so freaky is because it destroys anthropomorphism and it destroys the centrality of humanity.
Yeah, it's another
at the
Copernican
center.
turn.
It's another Copernican turn.
Because human beings, having integrated the idea that they're not the creations, or they don't appear to be the creations of an omniscient, omnibenevolent, omnipresent, eternal deity,
Maybe
they're like,
farm.
okay, we have to pull ourselves up by our own bootstraps because we are alone in the universe. But then, like, what about a even more insulting and terrifying relativization? Because we are not the greatest thing with only the laws of physics to keep us company, as Harari says at the end of Sapiens. But there is this other presence which is beyond us, and yet they're contingent, fallible, biological. That, I think, is frightening and awe-inspiring and interesting.
And that is why you listen to Ontological Shock.
That's right.
I'm Eliott Edge.
And I am Nathaniel Voss.
And we will see you again soon on the weird side of the walk. Thank you for joining us. Follow the links in the description, like, subscribe, follow our provider, Social Media House, and thank you for joining us.